Don't forget to like and subscribe. As the tale of Kate Batts, the Blackwood Witch, passed from generation to generation, it became more than just a warning, an ominous legend that cast a shadow over the land. Those who dared venture near the Blackwood estate could feel the weight of her presence, a constant reminder of the dark forces at play. But few understood the full extent of the curse, its origins entwined with a long history of betrayal, ancient rituals, and the unstoppable wrath of a spirit scorned. To fully grasp the magnitude of what had occurred on that cursed land, one must dive even deeper into the lives of those whose names had long been lost to time, the original Batts family, the ancient pacts they forged with the land, and the powerful entities that resided in the earth itself. Kate Batts had been born in an era of shifting beliefs. The world was beginning to lose faith in the old ways, and people like her father, Silas, sought to bend nature to their will. However, what Silas failed to understand was that there were things that mankind was never meant to control. He was blinded by his ambitions and the prospect of untold power, but in doing so, he ignored the warnings that had echoed throughout his family's history. The Batts were keepers of an ancient secret, a power that had been bestowed upon them by the earth itself. They had once lived in harmony with the land, but that harmony could only be maintained through respect and balance. By breaking that sacred connection, Silas had not just invited chaos, he had summoned something ancient, something far more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. The spirit that Silas had unwittingly awakened was not of this world. It was the embodiment of the earth's raw, untapped energy, an entity that had slumbered for millennia, waiting for the moment when mankind's greed would breach the threshold of nature's power. It was an ancient force known by many names, but those who spoke of it knew better than to call it by any name at all. To speak it aloud would invite its wrath. And so, it lay dormant beneath the earth, its energy intertwined with the very soil, its anger stewing until Silas unknowingly roused it with his selfish ritual. Kate's father was not the first to tamper with the sacred balance of the land, but he would be the one to pay the highest price for his arrogance. Silas had been drawn to the powerful energy beneath the surface, believing that he could control it and bend it to his will. But the earth's energy was not something that could be dominated. It was something to be revered, something that existed beyond human comprehension. Silas's ritual of binding his soul to the earth had only served to awaken the wrath of the earth's guardian, the force that had been waiting for someone to cross that line. As Silas fell to the curse that he had unwittingly unleashed, Kate stood helpless, watching her once thriving family crumble. The land that had sustained them was now hostile, unyielding, and dying. But unlike her father, Kate was not blinded by ambition. She understood the dangers that her father had unleashed, and she knew the only way to survive was to find a way to restore the balance. But the more she searched, the more she realized the curse was far more profound than she had ever imagined. It was not just about breaking the land's bond with her family, it was a supernatural force, a power that could not be undone by mere mortal means. Desperate and consumed by grief, Kate turned to the one source of power that had always been intertwined with her family's history, the ancient rituals passed down through the Batts line. But these were not simple spells, they were rites that bound the very fabric of nature, meant to maintain balance, not to control it. Kate had seen her father's attempts to manipulate the earth's energy, and she knew that tampering with it again would be disastrous. Still, she had no other choice. If there was any hope of saving her family and ending the curse, she had to call upon the power that had been passed down through her ancestors, even if it meant risking her own soul in the process. In her search for a way to break the curse, Kate stumbled upon an ancient, forbidden ritual, a ritual that could potentially restore the land's balance. But there was a catch: it required a life to be sacrificed. And not just any life, it had to be the life of someone who was bound to the land itself, someone whose bloodline was intrinsically tied to the earth's energy. Kate's heart broke at the realization that the ritual might require the ultimate price, her own life. But as the walls of her family's crumbling world closed in around her, she knew there was no other choice. Her blood, her sacrifice, might be the only way to atone for the sins of her father and restore peace to the land. At this moment, a dark revelation began to dawn upon Kate. What if the curse was never meant to be broken? What if it was a punishment for an ancient transgression, a price that must always be paid for disturbing the sacred balance of the earth? The more she pondered, the more she realized that her father's curse might have been merely the beginning. There was a deeper force at play here, one that stretched back centuries, long before her father's rituals and the Blackwood family's greed. The land had always been alive, but it was not something that could be controlled. And those who sought to manipulate its power would forever be at its mercy. It was at this point in her journey that Kate met Abel Blackwood, a young man of the new generation of Blackwoods. Abel was different from the rest of his family. He had heard the whispers of his ancestors, the tales of the cursed land, and his conscience led him to seek redemption. But, unlike his forebears, Abel was not out for vengeance. He came to Kate with an offer. He would help her break the curse if she promised not to bring more bloodshed. His reasoning was simple. Both families had already paid the ultimate price, and the cycle of death and despair needed to end. Abel's appearance was both a blessing and a curse. For while he harbored good intentions, his presence only served to stir up the ancient powers that had been awakened. The earth reacted violently to his intrusion, as if to remind them both that there was no escaping the power that resided beneath it. The ground shook violently beneath their feet, and from the earth emerged an apparition, a figure wrapped in shadow, glowing with an ethereal light, the very manifestation of the curse itself. This force was not a simple spirit. It was the manifestation of the earth's anger, a physical embodiment of the wrath that had been unleashed by Silas's greed. Its very form was like a dark, swirling vortex of energy, constantly shifting between solid and vaporous, always growing and expanding. The Blackwood witch, Kate Batts, knew in that moment that there was no easy solution. To free her family, to free the land, they would have to confront this force head-on, and the price they would have to pay would be unimaginable. Abel stood beside her, both filled with dread and determination. Together, they made their way to the heart of the Blackwood estate, where the energy was most concentrated. The trees were warped, their trunks twisted into grotesque shapes, the sky above dark and brooding as if watching their every move. The curse had spread beyond the land, it had become part of the very fabric of the earth. And Kate realized then that she could no longer run from it. To break the curse, she had to confront not only the Blackwood witch but the very forces of nature that had been tampered with. As they neared the center of the estate, a piercing wail echoed from the ground itself. It was the cry of the earth, the cry of a land that had been scarred by greed. The Blackwood witch was coming for them. And as they prepared to face the wrath of Kate's legacy, they knew that only one thing was certain: the curse would never truly end, for the land would always remember, and the price of meddling with it would never be fully paid. Kate and Abel stood at the threshold of the cursed land, their hearts pounding in unison as the air around them thickened with an almost tangible force. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the once peaceful trees twisted like gnarled claws, reaching for the sky in desperate hunger. It was as though the earth itself was warning them to turn back, yet they pressed on, bound by the heavy weight of their shared destiny. With each step deeper into the estate, Kate felt the pull of the earth beneath her feet, a strange sensation that she had always known, yet never fully understood until now. It was as if the land recognized her, as if it remembered her bloodline and the mistakes of the past. Her father's actions had awakened something ancient, something primal, and now it was her responsibility to either atone for those sins or face the full wrath of the forces her family had foolishly disturbed. "Do you feel that?" Abel asked, his voice barely a whisper, though there was no need for words. The energy around them pulsed with a dark, malevolent force, a presence that seemed to watch them from the shadows. It wasn't just the curse of the Blackwood witch, it was the land itself, angry and restless, awaiting the inevitable confrontation. Kate nodded, her breath shallow. "We're getting closer. I can feel it. This place is alive. It's more than just the curse of the Batts family, it's the earth's fury, its need for retribution. And we're standing in the center of it." The trees around them began to creak and groan as if warning them to stop, but Kate and Abel moved forward, undeterred. They had no choice. Their only hope lay ahead. As they entered the heart of the estate, a massive clearing stretched out before them, an ominous blackened sky hanging heavy over their heads. In the center of the clearing was an ancient stone circle, covered in moss and overgrown with vines, yet still radiating an aura of power that was palpable. It was here, Kate realized, that the ritual had first been performed all those years ago. It was here that her father had called forth the forces he never should have dared to disturb. The very ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with the residual energy of that fateful day. Without warning, the ground erupted in a violent burst, and the form of the Blackwood Witch emerged from the earth. She wasn't the same as before. Her figure now was more than just a ghostly apparition. It was a solid, malevolent presence, her eyes glowing with an unearthly fire. Her voice, when it rang out, was like the clash of thunder, deep and resonant, vibrating through Kate's very bones. "Foolish children," the Blackwood Witch's voice boomed. "You think you can undo what has been set in motion? The land is mine, and you are nothing but pawns in a game that you cannot win." Kate stood tall, despite the terror that gripped her heart. She had known this moment would come, the moment when she would have to face the very essence of the curse her family had brought upon themselves. But she also knew that her bloodline was not cursed by mere happenstance. They were the guardians of an ancient balance. The land had chosen them to keep its power in check, to maintain its harmony with the natural world. Her father had failed in this sacred duty, and now it was Kate's turn to right the wrongs. "Your power comes from greed," Kate shouted, her voice steady despite the overwhelming force that surrounded her. "My father was a fool, but I am here to set things right. The land does not belong to you, it belongs to the earth itself. And I will restore the balance, even if it means sacrificing everything." The Blackwood Witch's laughter echoed through the clearing, a sound that seemed to warp and distort the very air around them. "You are but a child," she mocked. "Do you think you can restore what has been shattered? Your family's sins are far too great to be undone by simple words and noble intentions. The earth's power is not yours to command. It has chosen its path, and you will follow it, whether you like it or not." Kate's heart raced, but she forced herself to stand her ground. She could feel the weight of the land's fury, but she also felt the strength of her ancestors flowing through her veins. She was not alone. She had the power of her family's bloodline, of the ancient rituals they had once practiced in harmony with the earth. And in that moment, Kate realized that she had a choice. The Blackwood Witch was right in one sense, there was no going back. But the curse was not an inescapable fate. It was a cycle, a loop that could be broken, if only they could restore the balance between man and nature. Turning to Abel, Kate took a deep breath. "We need to perform the ritual. The one my father started, but this time, it will be different. This time, we will honor the land, not try to control it." Abel looked at her, his expression filled with uncertainty but also an understanding that they had no other option. He nodded, stepping back as Kate took her place in the center of the stone circle. She raised her hands, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her. The energy was fierce, but she welcomed it. She called upon the ancient rituals, reciting the words that had been passed down through her family, each syllable laced with the power of her ancestors. As she spoke, the earth seemed to tremble, and the wind howled in response. The trees bent toward her, their leaves rustling as though they, too, were listening to the ancient words. The Blackwood Witch, for the first time, appeared to falter, her form flickering in and out of existence as the ritual's energy began to take hold. "No," the Blackwood Witch screamed, her voice now filled with desperation. "You cannot undo what has been done. You will never be free." But Kate did not waver. She felt the energy of the land course through her, a connection deeper than any curse. The earth's fury, its sorrow, its anger, Kate became one with it, channeling its power to heal, not destroy. The ground beneath her feet began to crack, the stones of the circle shifting as the curse began to unravel. In that moment, the Blackwood Witch let out one final, anguished cry before her form disintegrated into the wind, leaving behind only a faint whisper that echoed through the trees, "The land is never truly free." Kate collapsed to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The air around them began to calm, the dark clouds parting to reveal the first rays of sunlight in what felt like centuries. Abel knelt beside her, his face etched with disbelief. "We did it," he said softly, as though afraid to believe it. Kate looked around, her heart filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. The curse had been lifted, but the land would always bear the scars of what had happened. The Blackwood Witch was gone, but the memory of her power would remain, a reminder that the earth was not something to be taken lightly. As Kate and Abel stood together, a new sense of peace settled over the land. The forest, once twisted and warped by the curse, began to heal. The trees straightened, the flowers bloomed, and the ground itself seemed to breathe again. But Kate knew this peace would not last forever. The land had been scarred, and nature's balance would always be fragile. She vowed, in that moment, to honor her family's legacy, not through power, but through respect and understanding. She would be a guardian of the earth, not its master. And she would ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. The curse was broken, but the journey was just beginning.